So we are on chapter 27, Be Perfect. Which again is rather a challenge chapter, not because of the difficulty of the topic in itself, just like the last Thursday meeting, the, the topic of good and evil, it's not so hard, the topic itself. It doesn't have some really difficult equations to resolve, but it deals in depth with ourselves, with inability to act with our knowledge. And it is, as I always say, in the apparently simplest things in life that we have the most trouble with. As I always say, is we words that we throw around, then when we ask to be defined, we have trouble with, right? Define love. Throw this word all the time. Who can give him a good definition of love? Define faith, define perfection. You are here to be perfect. What does it mean to be perfect? It is in the simplest things that to reach that great understanding seems to be the most difficult. Very often when it's like cook go and apply for a job, the first thing that the chef gonna ask the guy to do is to fry an egg. And you think, oh my God, what's the challenge of frying an egg? To, to fry a perfect egg is not that simple. You have to have very control of timing, temperature, and everything else, good movement with your hands. But everybody have fried an egg at home and nobody's so concerned with how perfect that is. So it is really in the simplest things that we seems to find the most trouble with. And be perfect again, just to go back on what we have spoken at the very beginning of the chapter. But Jesus, according to the scholars in Spiritism, who is, let's see who else I have to unmute. Okay. No. Okay. To be perfect, in accordance to some Spiritist scholars, what was meant by Jesus, reminding that both Hebrew and an Aramaic languages have a very small lexicon, very small number of words, not like English and even Portuguese. Has this huge lexicon, English more than Portuguese. That there is one word that defines one thing. Very often you don't have a difficulty to find one word for one thing that we mean. Those two languages have very few words, so one word would have very many meanings. And of course, people would totally understand what it meant in accordance to the circumstance, we were in accordance to the rest of the sentence. So the word love would have different meanings, and the word perfect would have different meanings. And the meaning given here in this reading, when Jesus says, "Be perfect as perfect as Father is your Father who is in heaven," it means fulfill all your duties. Be perfect in taking care of your business. Be perfect in doing what you have to do. And and he could not use any other example but God. He could not say, "Be perfect as I am perfect." His whole teachings in humbleness would crumble if he said that. Perhaps today you understand if he said that, but then we would not understand if Jesus says, "Be perfect as I am perfect." It would sound very wrong at that time. Could not use, let's say, the big chiefs in the Synedrium because it was always combating their ideologies. Could not say be perfect as the emperor of Rome because we see all the atrocities that they had caused. So the only model of perfection he could use was indeed God, and indeed is the right one to use, the one who is perfect in everything, one who has created us from his perfection and created absolute perfect laws designed to bring us back to a state of complete purification. And today we deal with the chapter, starting today with virtue. We have covered duties last week, which is very interesting. And when it comes to duty, I imagine, or I made the assumption, somebody can correct me, of course, this is a study group. I'm not here to lecture anyone, I'm not capable of it. That if you see most of the great spirits who bring this doctrine to us, the group of the Spirit of Truth, many of them are from the Catholic, come from the Catholic ideology. Europe was immersed in Catholic ideology at the time of Kardec. It was those coming out of from the stronghold of the Catholic Church, but of course it remained strong. And one of the great teachings of the Catholic Church, one of the things that you do in the Catechism is the study of the virtues. And again, I don't have a strong Catholic background. Anyone who has a bad one and can complement and help me out here, you'll be much welcomed. So the virtues, because then that's another word, right? That we say, what are virtues? What can define virtues? What are you talking about the virtues? We use the word all the time, but what do we mean by that? So going a little bit more into the Catholic theology, we see that the virtues that they said there is basically seven of them. Four are the so-called natural or human, the ones that is there for everyone and to be used here in our lives, and they are all good. I don't think anybody will say there's indeed good virtues. Of course, you know how to say good, because to say virtue, of course it's good. So good virtue is redundancy, and I hope I don't use that again. So the four cardinal or the natural or human virtues are prudence, that equals to wisdom, justice, fortitude, which equals courage, and temperance, which equals self-control. I don't think anyone in any religion or lack of religion or ideology or philosophy would disagree that these are really good things for humans to have. Prudence or wisdom, justice, fortitude, temperance. Added to that, there was the ones, they are the so-called theological virtues. And here's where perhaps we'd have a little bit of a problem, not because of the virtue itself, but the way it's explained. This it said that it's grace given by God. We can only get them when it's basically gift given to us through baptism. There's a necessity of the baptism. And they can only be augmented, increased by the grace of God. Meaning that the way I understand, there isn't much that we can do to make them grow, to make them stronger within us, but can only be done by the grace of God. And if you remember, we studied that in the past, grace of God is based on something that we have no control of it. It happened despite of us, so to say, or regardless of us. It comes from God, period, right? And those three would be faith, hope, and love, which equals charity. So, so the whole seven virtues, according to the Catholic, if we did the catechism and all the courses that we do in the Catholic Church, would come with one, prudence, two, justice, three, fortitude or courage, four, temperance or self-control, and then faith, hope, and love equals charity, which are all wonderful things. No one would disagree that this is, if one has all of that, one should have a very dignified life. Though, of course, the part that Spiritism would disagree with the Catholic theology is that faith, hope, and charity, like all the on above as well, is things that we conquer through our effort, is things that we conquer and or at least augment, make stronger within ourselves through our efforts to developing our moral and intellectual qualities. We have studied that, let's say, faith is something innate in us, in our simplicity. All the cultures throughout the planet has that innate faith that and by faith here, I mean the belief of a divinity, of something that is greater than this physical life over here, something much superior to everything that is here. But of course, the faith, as we'd like to understand faith as a fidelity with that divinity, is something that we need to work, that we have to develop within us, and we do by our own effort, not truly by the grace of God. In Spiritism, we agree that there is a component of the grace of God in everything, right? But that component is be like a point of ignition, something to start us up, because we need that something to start us up, as if God starts the fire for us to say, now it's your responsibility to keep it going or to make it bigger, right? So that point of ignition, I mean, just about everything could be the grace of God, our reincarnation. I know there is a process. I know we want to reincarnate. We understand the need to reincarnate, but it's the grace of God that allows us to be born over and over again and make ourselves better, hopefully, over and over again, right? There's that little component, but after that little point of ignition, you're born here again. Now, what do we do with this life here? It's really up to us. And along the way, we see little bits of the grace of God throughout, of course. Each day that we live here is a grace of God, because no one knows what is the timing bomb that we have within us that could go off at any minute and end this reincarnation. So each day that we have, it is indeed the grace of God. But what do we do with it? Then it's our free will and intelligence that decides it for us. So I think the spirits of truth found the part to bring the top cover virtue to further explore those 7 things that we have, right? And I repeat: prudence, justice, fortitude or courage, temperance or self-control, faith, hope, and charity. Any questions that, or anyone wants to add anything to it at this point? Okay, so we can read the first one, number 8, please.
Okay. I'll read it, Elmo, yes?
Please.
Okay. Virtue, number 8. In its highest expression, virtue encompasses all essential qualities that comprise the good person. To be good, charitable, hardworking, reasonable, and modest are the qualities of virtuous individual. Unfortunately, they are frequently accompanied by small moral ills that tarnish and weaken them. Those who parade their virtues are not virtuous, since they lack the principal quality, which is modesty, and display the vice most contrary to it, which is pride. A virtue truly worthy of its name does not like to show itself off. One might divine it, but it hides itself in obscurity and flees from the admiration of the masses. Saint Vincent de Paul was virtuous. The praiseworthy priest of ours was virtuous, and many others like known to the world, but known to charity, or known to contrary to it, which is pride. A virtue truly worthy of its name does not like to show itself off. One might divide it, but it hides itself in obscurity and flees from the admiration of the masses. Saint Vincent de Paul was virtuous. The praiseworthy priest of ours was virtuous, and many others little known to the world, but known to God. All these individuals were unaware that they were virtuous. They allowed themselves to be carried along by the stream of the saintly inspirations and practiced the good with complete disinterestedness and self-forgetfulness. It is to virtue, this thus understood and practiced, that I invite you, my children. It is to this truly Christian and truly Spiritist virtue that I advise you to devote yourselves. But keep from your hearts the thoughts of pride, vanity, and self-centeredness, which always tarnish the most beautiful qualities. Do not imitate those who set themselves up as models and who extol their own qualities before all who are complacent enough to listen. This virtue of ostentation often hides a multitude of small turpitudes and hateful weaknesses. In principle, individuals who extol themselves, who erect a statue of their own virtue, annul by this very act any real merit they might have. However, what can I say about those whose whole worth is to appear to be what they are not? I want to believe that individuals who practice the good feel an inner satisfaction at the
Bottom of the heart.
bottom of their heart, but whenever such satisfaction is exteriorized in order to receive praise, it degenerates into self-centeredness. Oh, all of you whom the Spiritist faith has warmed with rays and who know how far humans are from perfection, do not yield to such folly. Virtue is a grace that I desire for all sincere Spiritists, but I will say to them, better to have less virtue with modesty than more with pride, for it is through pride that successive humanities have been lost, and it is through humility that they will someday be redeemed.
I found this very first passage in virtue extremely interesting. I think the Mr. Madeleine here,
Mm.
he kind of tells us that we did, yeah, indeed have conquered some of those virtues already, right? We have some of those things. And we start by saying here that virtue is their highest expression. Virtue encompasses all the essential qualities that comprise the good person. To be good, charitable, hard work, reasonable, and modest are qualities of a virtuous individual. And that matches very well with the one that I just said from the Catholic Church: prudence, justice, courage, self-control, faith, hope, and charity. But the vice of pride corrupts any one of those things that we may have, a lot of it or a little of it. Maybe a little bit courageous, but pride diminishes the value of the courage. All of us better be fully honest, and pride will corrupt that honesty within us. And he ends saying that better to have less virtue with modesty than more with pride. For it's through pride that successive humanities having been lost, and it's through humility that will someday be redeemed. And I understand that. Let's assume that I have conquered honesty. I am absolutely honest. I would not take a penny that does not belong from me. I would not accept a praise that does not belongs to me. I'll be 100% honest. But I spent my entire life showing off my honesty, telling everyone how honest I am, and point fingers of everyone who is not honest as I am. So I do have the quality that cannot be taken away from me. I am honest. You know, if I give you, buy something for $3, give you a $10 bill, and you give me $17 change back, I understand that you thought that I gave a $20 bill and not a $10 bill. It's up to me to say, yeah, you made a mistake here, have your $10 back, or say, I didn't do anything wrong. You did the mistake. It's your problem, and I walk away with extra $10 in my pocket. And that poor guy at the end of the shift, they're gonna have to take $10 out of his pocket and put there for the owner of the enterprise because it was his mistake. I would not do that, but I would go around and tell everybody, you see the guy over there? I just saved him $10. I just, gave him $10 back that did not belong to me, and he made a mistake or she made a mistake. By me have this pride in trying to show off my honesty, I diminished the value of honesty. Still did the right thing for that person, but did the wrong thing for myself. Of course, I carry much less responsibility for being a fool talking too much, showing off my honesty, than if I had hurt that individual, because I just hurt myself with my pride. I just really create a problem for myself here, not to that person. So my mistake over here is really the pride itself. It's not in anything else. And that's what I believe is the point of this spirit over here. It says, have that, the temperance, right? That self-control over here, that you may want to, you may not be humbled enough to feel good about doing the right thing. You should feel good about doing the right thing. But we cannot use doing the right thing as a tool to gain an advantage in society or anything else. It's your obligation. You know, every time that would come home, which is very seldom, by the way, and get a very good grade on a test, I would show to my mom, and she would say, "Well, you have done more than your responsibility," which was really putting me down because I was so proud to have a good grade finally. And she would say, "You haven't done more than what should have done," and it's absolutely right. You know, you have all the tools, you have all the time, you have all the everything to do well on a test. Not doing well on a test is a problem. Doing well on a test is what you should be doing anyway. For, for us to be honest, not to hurt someone is doing just what we have to do. We should not try to get any credit for doing the right things. But the exercise of self of pride, the lack of temperance, the lack of self-control without pride will diminish the value of any possible virtue that you conquered. Now, again, it's an exercise. You know, we start by have the self-control, the desire to go and show it off, but control it. And as a natural law, also, if you don't use it, you lose it. The more you put that pride into use, the more you will diminish that pride and that vice, pride, until we eliminate it together. All right, any comments, any questions?
Okay. Superiors and subordinates. Number 9. Authority, as much as wealth, is a trust for which those who have been vested with it will have to render an accounting. Do not think that it is given to them to provide them with the vain pleasure of command, nor should you be like most of the power holders of the earth, who wrongly believe that it is a right, a property. God, meanwhile, provides them with proof enough that it is neither, for he takes it from them at will. If it were a privilege inherited to them, it would be inaudible. However, no one can say that something belongs to them when it can be taken from them without their consent. God gives authority either as a mission or a trial when he deems it appropriate, and it takes it away in the same manner. All those who are trustees of authority, to whatever extent, from masters over their servants to sovereigns over their people, should not forget the fact that it is souls who are under their charge, that they will answer for the good or bad guidance they have given to their subordinates, and that the wrongs their subalterns might commit and the vices to which they might yield as a result of such guidance or bad examples will fall upon them, whereas they will reap the fruits of their kindness for leading them to the good. All people on earth have a mission, great or small, whatever it may be. It is either given for the purpose of goodness, to deviate from it, deviate, deviated from it, and it is always given for the purpose of goodness, to deviate from its principle. Therefore, it is to fail in fulfilling it. God asks the wealthy, what did you do with the wealth that in your hands should have been a source for spreading prosperity all around you? He will ask of those who possess some degree of authority, what did you do with that authority? What evils did you prevent? What progress did you foster? If I gave you subordinates, it was not so that you could make them slaves to your will or tame instruments for them for your whims or your greed. I made you strong and entrusted you with those who were weak in order to uphold them and help them ascend to me. Superiors who conform to the words of Christ despise none of those who are beneath them, for they know that social distinctions mean nothing before God. Spiritism teaches them that if their subordinates obey them today, they might have made you strong and entrusted you They have command. Okay. They might have
Command.
commanded them in the past or might do so in the future, and that they will then be treated according to how they have treated their subordinates. If superiors have duties to fulfill, subordinates on their part have theirs also, and they are no less sacred. If the latter are spiritists, their conscience will tell them even more strongly that they are not exempt from their duties, even when their superiors fail to fulfill theirs, because spiritists know that one must not repay evil with evil, and that the wrongs of some do not authorize the wrongs of others. If their position entails suffering, they tell themselves that they most assuredly must have warranted because they perhaps abused their authority in the past and must in turn feel the improprieties they made others suffer. If they are forced to endure such a position because they cannot find a better one, Spiritism teaches them to resign themselves to it as a trial for humility needed for their advancement. Their belief guides their conduct. They act as they would want their subordinates to act toward them if they were if they were
If they were
if they
a
were
boss.
their boss, right? For this reason, they are more scrupulous in fulfilling their obligations, since they understand that any negligence in the work that has been entrusted to them is harmful to those who pay them and to whom they owe their time and efforts. In other words, spiritists are guided by the sentiment of duty that their faith gives them, along with the certainty that any detour from the straight and narrow will be a debt that will have to be paid sooner or later.
Okay. We have spoke of a little bit of grace, and I've spoke with grace a lot more in the past during the study of the gospel. That indeed there is a component of grace in about everything in our lives. There is a component that is besides us, that is regardless of us, that is independent of us, of our good, of our bad. That happens to us, and we may call that as a grace of God. The fact of, again, just by being able to having this one more day here on earth. It's a grace of God in many different ways. In our positions, in our status, in our workplace, as an example, or in society, of being a position of authority, of being a position of delegating commands, it it may be just a natural process of developing ourselves in that community, on that workplace. As an example, and let's say in construction, let's say someone will start um, early age as just an assistant, just carrying bricks, and developing later in the position of putting bricks in place and continue to develop himself in the work, may become a leader here and a leader there, and go to learning, and eventually may become the position of being the leader of a group, putting up walls, and goes through a natural process, even if wasn't really the goal of that individual to become the supervisor of a group or something like that. The natural process, the experience of that individual as it matures, as it perfects itself in that position, that workplace, gives that person that natural going up the ladder to gain that position of command, of superiority, of supervision of others, so to say. And of course, not taking consideration here education in school. Unfortunately, and perhaps fortunately, it's arguably that someone comes into with a paper degree in their hands may trump the years of experience that someone has, which one can argue if it's right or not. I'm not gonna go there. I am taking away that piece of the puzzle here, and it's a natural process of gaining experience and then knowing things that you only know by working and gives you that position of authority eventually. There isn't a grace of God, even in that, it's your merit that allow us to get over there, to be in that position. And if you gain that position, you gain tremendous amount of responsibility, moral responsibilities. If you are in a position of leading, you must lead. And you must lead in accordance to spirit is not only how to put a brick in place, but to lead, to teach the process in general. And if you reach that position of authority, of being superiors to others in the workplace or into that community, or the community, if become the mayor of the city or something like that, you're in a position of authority that you work for it, perhaps you merit, but there is also that component of the grace of God that we cannot extrapolate, we cannot take it out. Because again, even if I'm working in a field, I don't know, in a lab, and I started very young, just washing the petri dishes and go to the process of gaining experience, of learning, of become really at the workplace compatible to someone with a degree, knowing just as much as someone with a degree, just by being there and doing my own studies and thing. And let's say that my boss is ready to retire, and the natural process would be to replace that boss, take that position, become the boss of that lab. But the company decides to bring someone from outside just because they prefer me to have keep me where I am. I'm doing a good job over there, and the other person comes from the outside, comes with a bigger degree and whatever things. And there is that component of the grace of God that stopped me from getting over there. It was given to someone else, right? So there is always that little thing that you get there, even with all your effort, there is that component of the grace of God that we must be able to recognize, honor, and respect. And many ought to be grateful because you don't know what is the viper hidden in that flower bush that you want so much that once you get it, it comes and will bite you. But if it was entrusted to us that responsibility of authority, of commanding, of leadership, then you have to integrate that fully. You have to take that fully and be an example, and an example in all senses to those below us, so to say. And again, it's very important to understand those position of authority, which very often seems to be a wonderful thing, in reality may again be a viper hidden in the bush flowers. No, God gives authority either as a mission or a trial when he deems appropriate. He takes it away in the same manner. So it can be a mission. A mission is usually not a very simple thing. It's not a very pleasant thing all the time, right? Just ask Chico Xavier, just ask Mother Teresa, just ask Gandhi, just ask Martin Luther King. all those great missionaries, right? What did they have to endure? It's a hard mission that not everyone can handle, right? Or as a trial, as something that we have to have more hardship than pleasure throughout along the way to do it. But it's something desirable that you will want. And I believe that subconsciously we actually seeking the opportunity when they go to those trials to better ourselves as the eternal spirit. It can be taken away, it can be taken away for two different reasons. One, because benevolence chooses to lessen our trials, give us a break. And if you have faith, will not rebel against it. If you do, say the word is against us. If you don't, if you are prideful, or it can be taken away to protect our subordinates against our lack of moral qualities to take care of them. And if it's not taken away from us, very often again, it's the grace of God. So God allow us to go through that mission, to go through that trial, to go through that experience. In many ways, is the grace of God as well. A good leader, someone who possesses the authority, leads through example. Jesus Christ, right? Gandhi. We see that most of those great leaders, they don't lead by commanding for a distance, but they command being there on the trenches with the subordinates, doing the work, being the front line. And I think, of course, the great example is Jesus, but and everywhere we see that of the great missionaries that we name in history, and that many and the many throughout this planet that does not reach the news, but are doing exactly what Gandhi, what Xavier, what Mother Teresa have done in a small scale, naturally, but doing it nevertheless and deserve the same considerations as those who make it the first page of the news, of course. If on that side of the authority, there are those who have to give the example, in order for the engine to work perfectly, all pieces are extremely important. There is no piece less important. If you're going to get in an airplane and take a flight overseas, if you get to know that one little screw in the engine is broken, I think you'd rather not take that plane. I would not take that plane, because I do understand that one loose or broken screw can be a problem for the whole engine, and a problem for the airplane engine crossing the ocean may put our lives at some serious jeopardy. We may be enchanted by the high technology of the computer in that airplane and all the beautiful jet designs of modern engine engineering, but one screw may put at risk the whole enterprise. So everyone and everything is extremely important and pretty much equally important. Now, most of us in the city, we praise the authorities for doing what they're doing, or unfortunately not always praise, because don't recognize the hard work that they do, but we are very quick to point out the defects that they have in our pride and ignorance. We we admire the beautiful architectures of the city. We admire the flower fields in springtime and how beautiful the city is during Christmas, the lights. We very seldom think to remember the responsibility, the importance, I would say, of the guys who drive the subway trains, carry millions of people. I mean, they have lives at their hands, basically. We don't think of them. What if they start to doing things the wrong way? How much chaos would be? I don't know if those were here around when they have this huge the garbage pickup um, went out of work and stopped working for quite a few days. The chaotic situation that Manhattan was, there was basically no traffic, there was no place to put garbage anymore. How really horrible was that? Everybody understood the importance of having garbage collection on its regular schedule. When things are working well, we don't give value for those things. No guy gives value for the little screw in the airplane until it breaks and the airplane falls and 300 people dies, right? So those who are in the position of subordination are equally important over the position of authority. To begin with, I can command 100 people to do everything because I'm in the position of command, but nothing is going to be done if those under my command does not follow my command. I can design the most beautiful strategy as a general to win the battle, and it's an absolutely beautiful design. But if the soldiers don't execute, nothing gonna happen. The most brilliant coach in any sport, I'm saying football, may have the most beautiful strategy and to win a game, but if the players doesn't apply it in the field of that sport, all that authority is washed out with no value. So we are all equally important for the success of an enterprise. The same way that if you put all those great players on the field without any strategy, without a command, probably they're not going to win anything. And we had many examples of that. Anyone who follows sports, you'll see that say you have teams of great players who can't win anything because they lack good leadership. And of course, good leadership cannot win anything without players who execute their commands of those leaders. So everyone is equal. So those who gain the opportunity to be the subordinate must fulfill their duties as well, must be humbled to fulfill their duties as well, must understand that there is a grace of God that puts them in that position. And they must understand that in a proper, fair system, in order to gain the position of leadership, of command, one should have passed to the experience of being commanded or being the one fulfilling the commands of someone superior. That's how you learn. That's how you should gain that authority, that title to be out there, right? And I know it's not how perfect our society functions in many ways, in many fields, but no one would disagree that the general who starts as a simple soldier is more likely to command better than the one who comes from a parachute to become a general without passing to the level of soldiers and going up the hierarchy step by step. And then the natural process will be that way. So one must resign, be humbled, be grateful for that opportunity, and go up the ladder to become there one day, or stay there if one chooses. Some people do not like position of administration. One of the reasons that I left my field of work, because the one way to go up what I was working for was become administrator, and something that I don't want to do. The idea of sitting in the room and going through meetings from here, meetings for that, and design protocols, and that's not for me. Don't like that. I like to be on the field. I like to be with my hands dirty. We make less money. Well, somebody has to do it. I'll be happy to do it. I'll do the best that I can doing it. In more evolved societies, and that's one of the things that measure happiness. That's why the Scandinavian countries win year after year position of the most happy countries in the world. Is exactly that I can do what I like to do, what I feel that I'm great at doing, and that allows me to have a good quality of life doing that. So like I can be happy in other senses. The difference between the one who makes the least amount and the one that make the most in that is one to wait. I don't even imagine what is, like the one who makes the least and the one who makes the most, the one who makes a minimum salary and the one who's making billions there, right? There's a big discrepancy. So no things of happiness is that we be able to be subordinate, fulfilling my duty, being very happy doing that. And that, of course, requires a little bit of humbleness and requires a society that accommodates one to be able to do that as well. But the subordinate must understand that if you're in a position to obey, then you obey. That you're in the position of receive orders, you receive orders and you act appropriately, because that's what is your position. If you if authorities provide orders, commands that leads for those being commanded doing the wrong thing, this is very important. Those authorities are twice responsible, twice guilty. As in the other way, the subordinate who fulfills those commands doing the wrong thing have less responsibility. So if a soldier received command of attack and killing civilians in a war, so to say, it will do as being commanded. It perhaps will carry the responsibility of at a lesser degree for doing it. But those who create those designs, who command individuals to commit any crime, so to say, those are the two that are really responsible. And that way comes the responsibility of those in position of authority is much greater of the one of the subordinates. Comments, questions? No? Okay.
Okay. The individual in the world. Number 2. A sentiment of compassion must always animate the hearts of those who gather under the Lord's sight to implore the assistance of good spirits. Therefore, purify your heart. Do not let any mundane or futile thought linger in it. Lift up your spirit to those you are calling, so that finding in you the proper dispositions, they may profusely sow the seed that should germinate in your soul and produce within it the fruit of charity and justice. Therefore, do not think that in incessantly exhorting to prayer and mental evocation, we wish to advise you to live a mystic life that keeps you outside the laws of the society in which you have been condemned to live. No, live with the men and women of your time in the way that men and women should live. Observe the social necessities, even the frivolities of the day, but do it with a sentiment of purity which may sanctify them. You have been called to enter into contact with spirits of different natures and opposite characters. Do not clash with any of those with whom you might find yourself. Be cheerful and happy, but of the cheerfulness provided by a clear conscience and the happiness of heirs of heaven, counting the days that will,
Nearer.
okay, it will draw them nearer to their inheritance. Okay. Virtue does not consist in assuming a stern and gloomy face or in rejecting the pleasures that your human conditions allow. It is sufficient to report all the actions of your life to the Creator who has given such life. It is sufficient when one begins or finishes a deed to lift one's thought to that Creator and to ask Him in an impulse of the soul to grant His watch care for carrying it out and to grant His blessing for finishing it. In all that you do, look to the source of all things. Do not do anything without the thought of God purifying and sanctifying your acts. As Christ said, perfection is found entirely in the practice of absolute charity, but the duties of charity extend to all social positions from the lowest to the highest. Those who live in isolation would have no charity to practice. It is only through contact with impulse of the soul. Okay.
Considering the law of the eyes, those who live in isolation do not have charge to practice. Only through their contact with their fellow beings in the most arduous struggles that they find the opportunity to practice it.
Thus,
Those
those
who live, go ahead.
those who isolate themselves intentionally deprive themselves of the most powerful means of perfection, since they have only themselves to think of. Their lives are those of a selfish person. Do not imagine, therefore, that in order to live in constant communication with us, to live in the Lord's sight, that you must put on the cellus and cover yourselves with ashes. No, no, and once more, no. Be happy in accordance with the needs of humankind, but may your happiness never hold a thought or commit an action that might offend God or anything that might cloud the face of those who love and guide you. God is love, and He blesses all those who love virtuously. Protect the spirit.
So, in a very short way, I can say that this protecting spirit is telling us you are here, you are here now because at your level of more intellectual progress, this is the best place for you right now. In this place where you are right now, you face the challenges associated with this place, but you also offer the opportunity to enjoy the pleasures associated with this place. Do not think that all the pleasures associated with this place are going to are misleading, are going to lead you to something not good. Because if it happens to be pleasurable, it's because there is good within them. Elevate yourself, purify yourself in a way that when you enjoy those good things here, you do with a purified heart, with a purified sentiment that does not corrupt the goodness in things. Unfortunately, let's say we create taboos in our society. Sex is one of them. If sex was not supposed to be pleasurable, it would not be pleasurable. Sex was not supposed to, so to say, good, it would not be good. But in order to enjoy those good things in life, one must be responsible, one must understand, and one must practice with the highest of the purity of heart and mind. And if it's here to be used, use it properly. Educate yourself in the process of using those things, right? I think the the pandemic of that you experienced those 2 years of hardship, of isolation almost, revealed to us a lot of what the Spirit's talking about. There's a lot of good things here to be appreciated. That is important that we appreciate it as individuals live in society. A simple example, at least, was we live in New York, not having the theaters, not be able to go to the theaters, how detrimental it was, not only for ourselves individuals, who naturally who enjoys theater, right? But for the city itself, for the community itself, the hardship that imposed for so many people. Going to the theater is a pleasure. Yes, it is. Should we enjoy it? Yes, we should. Should we exceed, commit an excess? And of course not. In excess is not good. I do believe there is a range of what we believe was normal to everything, right? It's nothing one straight line, but a range. I don't know, whatever. As an example, so to say, let's say the electrolytes in our blood. What's the right amount of sodium in the blood? It's not one number. It's a range, right? It goes from 130 to 145, right? Someone lives perfectly at 128. Someone lives perfectly at 146. Is number wise, statistically wise, outside of the range, but people live perfect lives with those numbers. So there is a range over there. But if it is 110, oh, it's bad. If it is 170, it's really bad. So there is a range of normal, of good in everything. So to enjoy pleasure associated with the where we live, there is also a range of normalcy. Okay. And we can go beyond that range and commit excess, and we can live below of it and not enjoy things. You know, going to the theaters, enjoying a good show, going to the museums, and gain not only entertainment but culture is also good. Can we commit an excess? I believe so. If you take the time that you should be working and productive, you spend all this time in the theaters or in the museums, perhaps an excess. If you the money that you should be paying your rent and putting food on the table, you're spending on those things, you're committing excesses. So you can commit excess in everything. So educating ourselves, purifying ourselves to be able to live and be an individual in this world and enjoy all the goodness that it has to offer and avoid all the traps requires education and requires a degree of help, of assistance. And this very paragraph of it is extremely important when it says, a sentiment of compassion must always animate the hearts of those who gather under the Lord's sight to implore the assistance of good spirits. So basically, when we pray, when we elevate our thoughts to ask for something from the good spirit, it says we, to implore the assistance of the good spirits. It is for that reason that we start our work every single time, asking us to elevate ourselves, asking us to free our minds or thoughts of the mundane things and seek to be in contact, in harmony, in symphony, so to say, with those good spirits who are able to assist us. Because remember that we are calling them, we are asking them, then we need to be open to them. No, I can't go to say to a person and ask me to put rice in my bag. If my bag is closed, I have to open up so the rice can go in there. In a very simple way. So therefore purify your heart. Do not let any mundane or futile thought linger in it. We always ask for that. We're going to start our work over here. We're trying to learn this stuff, try to understand this stuff. And in this process of learning, understanding, we wanted to implement this knowledge into our makeup in a way that we will act in accordance with this knowledge. We want to bring that knowledge from the intellect, from the heart, implement in our heart, in our sentiments, in our mind, because again, the heart, the intelligence of the heart, as Jesus used to call, is what generate thoughts, and thoughts generate actions. And again, words are actions, right? So when you get all this knowledge that again here at the intellectual level, the easy one, we need that assistance from the good spirits to bring it at a higher level, to sublimate that knowledge, become the intelligence of their heart, so that it will generate the sentiments pure that will by itself produce purified thoughts and actions, of course. And if you are able to do that, then we can fully be an individual in this world, living and enjoying anything that is enjoyable for us here, with responsibility, with respect to the natural laws, in accordance to the natural laws. And of course, fulfill our duties or responsibilities associated with being here as well. It's important to, and I think one of the importance of values of doing this or having this time to remind ourselves of our spiritual nature in any kind of religion or spirituality that one has. Take at least a couple of minutes daily to reflect upon that, to help us to stay above of the energies that seeks to corrupt us, that seeks to leads us to excesses in the pleasures of this world. That to help us to maintain purified sentiments that vibrates above the purely mundane, the purely material pleasures of this world. If I'm able to do that, we should be able to have a very profitable life here. And that's what the Spirit reminds us. Therefore, I do not think that in incessantly exhorting you to prayers and mental evocation, we wish to advise you to live a mystic life and keep you outside the law of society in which you have been condemned to live. That's interesting, the word condemned. But we want, they're telling us, you want you to pray, you want to come to us, not to seek to live a world out, a life outside of the world where you are right now. We are asking you to come to us to harmonize yourself with us, to live the best possible life there where you are, being where you belong. Otherwise, it makes no sense being here. Otherwise, it makes no sense to go through all this incarnation seeking to live somewhere else. So our prayers, the guidance from the spirits, is not meant to deliver us from where we belong, but to give us the necessary tools to live well where we are, to do all that we can, the best that we can where we are. And very important that we're not here to have a life of mortification, of hurting ourselves. We're here to enjoy the goodness that is here also, because the goodness is everything. To enjoy the beauty that is it. That's why there is beauty in this world, to be appreciated. But with respect, with purity of heart, and again, to obey the social necessities. And it goes beyond even the frivolities of the day, but do with a sentiment of purity which may sanctify them. And I think gives us a little bit of a break here when it says even the frivolities. Saying like, we know you guys, you know that you can't be all that pure, but do your best. Do the best that you can. And it's obvious you have plenty of examples of individuals who that we at our level are able to live a good, decent life without giving into excesses or needing to deprive oneself from whatever it's available to us here, and still make the best use of all the opportunities and have a comfortable, enjoy your life. You are here because here where we belong. The virtue does not consist in assuming a stern or gloomy face, or in rejecting the pleasures that your human conditions allow. I think it's very interesting to use the word allow. It is allowed to us. Can we access, and that's one of the big problems in our world today, in developed country like ours, our biggest problem is committing the vice of exceeding ourselves in many things, right? One simple example is food, gluttony. Are we forbidden to enjoy an ice cream? One would say no. Perhaps the radical nutritionist would say, yes, you can never eat ice cream in your life. But what the spirits are telling us here? No, you can enjoy your favorite flavor ice cream, but you cannot live on it. You cannot make it a habitual thing to have a pint every day. Can't you be satisfied and have a couple of spoons, every other day or so? What's wrong with that? But if you make a habit to have a pint every night, what are you doing? You condemn yourself to bad health. You're committing excesses, and there is no cause and consequence. You're going to seeking to enjoy a couple of spoons of ice cream today. Perhaps you eat a little bit of carbohydrate before it. So you compensate. You're smart, using intelligence. But what do? We load up with as much carbohydrate as possible, and then you had a pint of ice cream. And what do you expect? Nothing good could come out of it. So be intelligence. And in our prayers, why does, I remember Shusara said, does it make sense to pray before we eat? Yes, of course it does. It makes sense to pray before anything and after everything. Pray, help me to exceed myself, help us to have temperance, one of the virtues, right? Self-control, and respect the limitations of my body. Help me to listen to my body. My body let us know when it's enough. But when the eyes are bigger than the stomach, you go and you commit excesses. But if we have the purity, if you are able to listen to our own body, you know when to stop. So you're allowed to enjoy the pleasure that this world offers to us. Necessities of the stern spirit doesn't change really, but the necessities in our society does change in accordance to the development of that society. A very simple example is a smart cell phone. It's become more and more than a luxury than a necessity. I can tell that in my job, in my profession, I have to have a smartphone. I have to be able to send videos, images of CAT scans, of MRIs to my attendings. I have to have a very advanced technology speaking means of communication using the smartphone. Otherwise, I could not really perform my job today. It's no longer a luxury. It is no longer an accessory, but it is a necessity today. It changes with time. It changes with technology. It makes everything better. Makes communication better. So learn to live with those. Learn to understand those necessities. You are here now in this world, 2022, with this high technology world. You try to accommodate yourself to the best. I struggle tremendous with, as we can see, the beginning of our talk today. I have a hard time getting the computer going with the audio. You have to figure out. There's nothing wrong with my computer, so everything's wrong with me. You need to acclimate or have to be an individual of the world. And this world today require a better understanding and be more comfortable with technology. Can we commit excesses? Yes. Can we leave aside our social life and entrenched our entire life in technology and no longer enjoy a good conversation, a good walk in the park because everything is in front of a screen right now? We need to learn to balance everything. Technology has demanded that from us also. That after, and again, I think the pandemic is a good example for us to look at it. That our life in society is so important when we are isolated, so much problem happen to society, so much, even the suicide level increasing, especially among the youngsters. I was just reading about that. Why? Because we are still social beings. If we don't protect ourselves from the excesses that technology can lead us, we're going to deal with the consequences of that. Being here now, having all this technology, still demands that we remind ourselves more and more there are social beings that we need one another. There have to be a more warmth interaction amongst us. Love doing this work online because I understand the necessity of it, but I do not admit the idea that you don't need to go to a place and get together and be face to face and discuss things eye to eye in a place that, in our case, we call Spiritism, but could be any other house of of getting together, what's called the church, right? Which is basically a place of getting together. Um, as Christ said, perfection is found entirely in the practice of charity, of absolute charity. But the duties of charity extend to all social positions, from the lowest to the highest. This is extremely important as well. Being this world means the right to socialize with one another, regardless of our social level, regardless of this, of our position in society. We need to expand ourselves to others, to give and to receive. One cannot be charitable in the desert where there is no one for you to share, to give something of yourself. And at some time, one cannot learn in the desert because there is no one to teach you. We need to keep ourselves, remind ourselves of that. We are codependent. I do my progress to myself. I cannot give my progress to anyone else. But my progress depends on the sharing of giving and taking. The more I give, the more I gain. And there is no one to share with me, then I cannot progress. So we are truly codependent. We must be in society, and we must pay attention to that necessity to avoid losing the opportunities given to us to progress through the sharing, to giving and receiving consistently. Another reason that I always like to call this a study group, reject the idea of one teaching as no teachers. We are here all to try to pick each other's brain, try to share what we have. Even our questions, what we don't know, we should be sharing in order for everyone to gain as much as possible. That is the meaning of living in the society. And if we're here, it's because we need one another. That's a part of being here. Otherwise, we did not need to be here. So I think it's, to me, it's one of the favorite parts in this book when the spirits tell us that you're here now because you need it here. You're here now because you need to work, to learn, to go to all the hardships associated here. But God is all love, so benevolence. With the hardship, with the work, there is the time to rest. There is the time to enjoy some good things. Do all of that. That is part of being here. Okay, time is up. Or if anybody has any question or comment. If not, Carol, can you do a prayer for us, please?
Sure. Thank you, Elmo. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sarita, and thank you everyone for participating. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, all goodness and grace, we give thanks for the opportunity today to be together as brothers and sisters for our study of the Gospel according to Spiritism, our study about duty and virtue. We are grateful to the spiritual benefactors and mentors for inspiring and guiding us to receive the wisdom and blessings of the teachings. May we put into practice these virtues of wisdom, fortitude, temperance, and self-control. Through charity, we exercise our faith, hope, and love. Do good, be good, think good. May we keep our thoughts elevated and our hearts open. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ to assist us each day. May we extend our prayers and love to those in the physical world as well as those in the spiritual world who are suffering and in need of healing and guidance and reassurance. We give thanks for all we have received today, the many blessings helping us, healing us, inspiring us to move forward each day. Day by day, we progress, we move forward, and we are elevating, and we are moving toward a greater expansion of our consciousness. As we close today, we remind ourselves to be beacons of light, to go forth in safety, protection, peace, and harmony to those we love, our family, friends, loved ones, and coworkers, for we are never alone. We are always able to tap into and ask for guidance, assistance, and healing as we do our part. We humbly close now and remind ourselves to be beacons of light. Go forth now in peace, in love, and in charity. So be it. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you,
Thanks,
Elmo.
everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
Elmo.
you, Elmo.